Do you like scintillating conversation about comics, cartoons, and the multiverse? Well, this episode will be catnip for your ears. Welcome to Dear Watchers, an omniversal comic book podcast where we do a deep dive into the multiverse.
We are traveling with you through the stories and the worlds that make up an omniverse of fictional realities we all love. I feel like I should have been singing that line. And your watchers on this journey are me, the brunette in the band, Guido.
And me on double tambourine, it's Rob. And wait, it's our third Pussycat. We are reunited and it feels so good. Welcome back, Ethan.
Hello.
Hello, and by process of elimination, I guess I'm Melody, and I play drums anyway, so it works out.
Oh, there you go.
Look at that. That's perfect. I play nothing, so I don't know what that means. Well, in the cartoon, we'll get into this, but in the cartoon, they just have her swinging tambourine, so I could do that.
Well, that's Val. That's she's the bassist, but she's playing. Yeah, I don't know why.
Well,
but,
no, I'll be tambourine Val.
Okay, there you go.
I can manage that.
And
Ethan,
before
welcome
we
back. It's so exciting.
Welcome back.
Yes,
Yay.
good to be here. Good to be back.
This is our 9th episode together. I went
Oh
back
my
and
gosh.
counted.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I know. You're a regular, a staple, but it has been a while, so we're really excited that you're back and for our conversation today.
I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, before we begin our little musical tour, Guido, what's new in our section of the multiverse?
I mean, not much is new with us. I will mention 2 TV shows that we're watching, though, that are new. And Ethan, I'm curious if you've watched either. We just binged the Masters of the Universe Revolution, which is the 2nd season of the new reboot, requel, if you will, by Kevin Smith. Are you a He-Man fan, Ethan?
I appreciate He-Man, but I haven't really delved into that world.
Well, Revolution is fun. It's 5 episodes, so it's quite bite-sized, which is the only disappointing part about it. And our listeners should tune in because I think we're going to be talking to one of the creators and writers in the very near future. So that's exciting because there's lots of teases in this season of Revolution that I want to dig into with them. And then we also watched Echo. Ethan, did you watch Echo?
Yeah. Oh, I watched Echo.
We are savoring it, so we didn't watch the finale yet. We watched the first 4. Whoa, it is good.
Yeah.
It's really good. Where did this show come from? And as someone who was totally on the MCU is falling apart bandwagon and having like a deep emotional disappointment every time I consume something, this show is like, I enjoy this show. I enjoy this character. It's tight. It's well written. It's good action. I'm like, where did this come from?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And both of those shows are 5 episodes, which is kind of nice. Like it's nice and bite-sized. You can get through it in a week or 2. And so many of these other shows, especially some of the MCU shows, they go like, "Oh, we don't need that 8th episode." Like it would have been much better if you just ended at 5.
Or in the Netflix series, we didn't need that 7th episode. Or that 9th episode,
Yes.
or the 13th episode.
Exactly.
And again, I love Daredevil very much. And I enjoyed that show when I watched it, but it's hard for me to go back and watch it because I'm like, there's a lot of filler.
Totally.
Yeah,
same with
definitely.
Jessica Jones. I really want to go rewatch it. And it's just like, I don't have 30 hours to spend doing this.
Yeah. And season 2 of Iron Fist, that was all filler.
And I know people are disappointed, like Born Again dropped an episode count. I'm like, no, that is a good thing. If it's going to make for better storytelling, I don't care if it's 18 episodes or 3 episodes. I want it to be better, and sometimes less space makes for better stories.
Exactly.
Well, if you're joining this episode for the first time,
And I said
we
space.
have.
You didn't even pick up on that, Rob.
Oh,
Come
I
on.
did. Sorry.
Dropping these puns for you left and right.
Sorry. Well, we have 3 parts to our journey today through the multiverse and space. Origins of the story, exploring multiversity, and pondering possibilities. So thank you for coming along in our little rocket ship.
And remember, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening to us in your ears. We appreciate it.
And with that, dear watchers, welcome to episode 126, and let's check out what's happening in the Omniverse with our travels to today's alternate universe. Today, we plug in and take off to answer the question, what if Josie and the Pussycats went into outer space?
You have some reverb on your mic
yeah.
there.
Oh, I thought you were going to add that in post. No? Oh, okay, never mind.
So this
That
alternate
works
Earth... We actually have 2 alternate Earths today. More on that in a moment. It's not been cataloged or classified. It doesn't have a number. Oddly, that it's happened twice and they're not connected either. So today's segments are going to be a bit different, with comics only making an appearance fully in our 3rd segment today. And we first talked Josie and the Pussycats with Ethan, mega fan of Josie and the Pussycats, back on episode 95 in May 2023. And Ethan is currently showing off, for people who are listening and can't see, his t-shirt of Josie and the Pussycats, the modern comic version that we covered back on episode 95. And before we dig in, Ethan, why did you choose our question for today that you chose?
Short answer, because we didn't have time to talk about this one when we talked about regular Josie. Because we could have done a whole, series of episodes just about Josie.
That is your dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we'll do it. It'll just take some time. We'll have some breaks in between, but I'm sure she has many more multiversal misadventures. So, yeah.
Well, we'll talk about the rest of our origins with Josie and the Pussycats during our first segment. So let's get into it. It's time for our opening act. It's Origins of the Story.
Right now, on this very show, you're going to get the answer to all your questions. Our amazing story begins a few years ago.
So first up today is The Nemo's a No-No Affair. Whoa, that is episode 1 of Josie and the Pussycats, the animated series from September 12th, 1970.
That title rings of when people would always make fun of Stan Lee or other writers trying to write like they thought teens were talking in the 60s. That's what that reads as. Were people calling things no-no affairs? I don't even know what that is. Anyway, yeah, so this episode is written by Lars Bourne, Tom Dejanay, and Bill Lutz, who have story credits. Jules Verne, of course, is credited for creating the character of Captain Nemo.
He'd be so proud.
Directed by Joseph Barbera and William Hanna. So it is a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. We'll hear more in a moment. And just a quick one-sentence summary for this episode, which is not loosely based on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but does seem to use that as a way of getting at the gang, Josie, the Pussycats, Alexandra, the twins, I don't know, Alan, whoever these people are. Ethan will tell us.
Yeah.
Who have found a modern-day descendant of Captain Nemo while on their way to a musical gig on Pago Pago Island. And it features the song Roadrunner, because every episode features a song. Before we dig in, though, Rob has some background on the series.
Yeah, so Josie and the Pussycats, the animated series from Hanna-Barbera, premiered on CBS on September 12th, 1970. So it was directly inspired, of course, by the success of the animated The Archie Show in 1968 and 69 from Filmation. And Hanna-Barbera... Yeah, exactly. And Filmation and Hanna-Barbera, I guess they were like the Jets and the Sharks. They were always wanting to one-up each other. So Hanna-Barbera wanted to come up with their own music-themed TV show. So they started with something called the Mysteries 5, and that became Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And Scooby-Doo premiered 1 year and a day earlier than Josie and the Pussycats. And it is a very, very clear template for the Josie show.
To the point where we thought some of the characters were Scooby-Doo characters.
Exactly.
So I was like, is that Shaggy?
Yes, we'll get into that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Josie and the Pussycat show only lasted 16 episodes, asterisks. We'll get into that in a second too. But it did make history with Valerie. She was the first regular black character on a cartoon voiced by a black actor. So that is pretty cool. And just a little note about some of the actors. So Josie was Janet Waldo, aka Judy Jetson. Valerie's vocals were by Patrice Holloway, singer of the sister of the Motown artist Brenda Holloway, and she did most of the lead vocals on the show. Melody's singing voice is Cheryl Ladd, who would go on to become one of Charlie's Angels, and the singing voices were chosen from over 500 submissions, according to them. Maybe that's not true. Melody's speaking voice is Jackie Joseph, who was Audrey in the Roger Corman's original Little Shop of Horrors and later Mrs. Futterman in the Gremlins movies.
Singing, right? Like
not singing, but you can totally see Audrey, kind of the dumb blonde in Little Shop of Horrors, and true. Here as well. Alan is Jerry Dexter, who was Sunfire on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. The Cabot's cat Sebastian and later Bleep the Alien is Don Messick, who would be Dick Dastardly's sidekick Muttley, and they do the exact same voice.
and also the voice of Scooby-Doo.
Oh, and the voice of Scooby-Doo. Yes, you're right. Yeah. And speaking of the exact same voice, Alexander is the famous DJ Casey Kasem, who is also Shaggy on Scooby-Doo, and the characters are basically exactly the same. They're drawn the same, they even have the same catchphrases, they're both in green, so yes, it's almost like a parallel universe to Scooby-Doo.
So, Ethan, start us off with, like, when did you discover this show in terms of your love of Josie? Was it after you fell in love with Josie, or was this the entry point? Or, like, tell us about this show.
So I kind of already knew about it, and I may have watched a few episodes as a kid, in reruns, of course. I'm 29. But I had rediscovered it after I had watched the first season of Riverdale. And Riverdale had rekindled my love of Archie, and I thought, okay, I need a fix. And so I looked into the show, and I thought, oh, this is very much like Scooby-Doo. So, in turn, Riverdale rekindled my love of Scooby-Doo indirectly.
So they are remarkably similar.
Yeah, it's just Scooby-Doo, but with a cat. And thankfully not this episode, but a whole lot more racism.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, God, really?
Yeah, we lucked out with a mad scientist this episode. Because some of the other episodes, the whole plot is usually, Josie and the Pussycats go to this country, and the villain is some dictator that's like every possible stereotype of that country.
Oh, wow.
God.
And it's a whole thing where it's like, we're like 2 steps forward with Valerie's portrayals, but then like 11 steps back.
Yeah, because Valerie is also like what's cool is she's also like the most capable one. She's like really the sense of she's the calm voice, but she's also the technical one in the group. So she really knows. Yeah, totally.
Inventor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Josie just gets herself like into trouble. Melody is the stereotypically dumb blonde, which is problematic.
And the comic relief.
Yeah, yes, but totally. She does get a lot of good jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of curious what your thoughts are, Ethan, because in this Josie and the Pussycats, as well as the next series that we're going to talk about, it really should just be called like Alexandra Cabot and the Pussycats, because Josie really doesn't have a lot to do. I think in this first episode, this Captain Nemo episode, she might have like 5 lines in the entire episode. So what are your thoughts on like Josie as a quote unquote central character?
I think that's one of the reasons why I love the movie so much. That they really centralize Josie in a way that we know it's her as the main character, but we're not taking away from the other characters. Everyone gets to shine, but we also know that it is all around her story. It's the same thing with the 2016 series. It's her story, but it's also everybody else around her.
Mm-hmm.
They really support each other a lot more than just, here she is. Daphne, classic Daphne is the template here. Classic Fred is the template for Alan, where he's also doing Jack.
Yeah, and even wearing an ascot like.
Yeah, they look exactly the same,
No, I'm
Alan
gonna
and
ask-
Fred. Yeah.
He's muscular Fred. He's
Yes, he's more
Fred.
muscular. Yeah, he's the hotter Fred. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I remember when we read some of the 60s comics on the last episode too, and I was also struck by like, oh, Alexandra really almost feels like the main character, and watching this first episode here too, she's the one that like drives all the action because it's always her meddling that seems to kind of keep the story engine going. And she's also just a fun character because who doesn't want to play the villain, really?
And they ditch her magic powers.
Oh yes, that's true.
She only ever has her magic powers when the plot requires it, and that's just the classic comics. I'm pretty sure at one point she met Sabrina in some Archie book, but I could also be thinking about a fan art piece. So I
bet they did. And can't she talk to Sebastian in the show, right? Isn't that kind of
well, kind of, right?
You kind of get the feeling like she can talk to the cat.
Yeah.
Kind of. But I always looked at that as like just talking to your pet. Now we'll get to that in the space comic.
Yes, they do play with it quite a bit there. And so this show overall, do you love it? Is it okay? Does it capture the spirit of Josie and the Pussycats? Where does it fall for you?
I think it's okay. I think it has a special place in my heart because it reminded me of how much I love Scooby-Doo and how much better quality a show Scooby-Doo is. But looking at it as a foundation for how much I love the movie, yes, I really do appreciate it for what it is, because I would say that the movie is more in the spirit of the cartoon than the cartoon is in the spirit of really anything else, except for in the spirit of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Because it's not even like the comics. Like, let's take this first episode. They fight this underwater dictator guy who uses music and makes no sense. Does that kind of thing happen in the Josie and the Pussycats comics?
Not really. There was a time when they tried to do like kind of a horror element where a couple of the stories were spooky, but most of the time it's Josie just going on misadventures with her friends, and it's anything kooky like that. It's really just girl Archie, and she plays music.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's such an interesting choice to make this TV show be tonally so different from the comic. And like, if you were a fan of the comic, I don't think you would have watched the show and been like, oh, there's my girls, like, because they're underwater fighting this Nemo. Like,
yeah. And to your point, Guido, too, like, they have Captain Nemo, who's like the actor's kind of doing like a Boris Karloff impression, but I think, as you said, it's more like Bobby Boris Pickett, who did the Monster Mash, doing Boris Karloff. That you even have him play the organ, which I don't think Captain Nemo played the organ. Why does he have an organ on his
Phantom
submarine?
Of the Opera.
He's a very Phantom, but it almost like. Yeah, it feels like they needed to include that just to get like another music theme, and it's like, oh, the show's supposed to be about music, so let's have the villain play the organ.
Yeah. It's a strange one, strange installation in the canon of Josie, for sure. It was amazing to me it only lasted for 16 episodes, because I also feel like it was on reruns growing up, and I feel like it was a fixture, but so many of these shows that live on in like our pop culture memory actually had such brief runs, and this is one example.
It did come back for an encore. So let's get into our exploring multiversity.
I am your guide through these vast new realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
In order to start to answer our question today, what if Josie and the Pussycats went into outer space? Space. We are going to begin with the TV debut of the story that almost 50 years later would become a comic, sort of, kind of. And that is, Where's Josie? That's episode 1 of Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space, which is essentially season 2 of Josie, the animated series, and this came out September 9th, 1972.
So this is directed by Joseph Barbera and William Hanna, and doesn't appear to have writing credits, which was common for cartoons back then.
They improvised the whole thing.
The song, though, did have a credit. Double Trouble in this episode was written by Richard Moyers. And a very brief summary, because we're surely going to dig in, and then Rob's going to give us some background to kick it off. Finding themselves lost in space aboard a spaceship, the Pussycats land on the planet Zelk and encounter a creature named Bleep. And Josie is kidnapped by an alien named Karnak, a ruler who is intent on conquering the population. And there are androids and doubles and all sorts of antics that we'll get into. But Rob, where did this show come from?
So, of course, the original animated series was canceled after 16 episodes, but in 1972, the show was recontextualized as Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space. So then it had 16 more episodes, which aired on CBS during the 1972-73 season, but it actually later reruns were on all 3 networks at the time. So, Guido, as you said, like, it seems to live in our heads in reruns.
It
was all over the place.
Episodes,
like,
yeah.
So we were probably seeing it decades later. And the show is the same cast as the original, plus the alien named Bleep. And it clearly, you even said they're lost in space. It clearly takes inspiration from Lost in Space, with Alexandra standing in as the Dr. Smith character, as in each episode ends with Alexandra, or sometimes another character, accidentally keeping the gang lost in space after they've been set back on their course for Earth.
So, and spoiler alert for the season, I think it's for the matter of syndication. Last episode, they're still lost in space.
They're still out there right now.
Never get back to Earth.
They've eaten Bleep by this point, yeah.
So this...
Would you...
Go ahead,
one thing about Double Trouble. Would you consider Double Trouble a universal groove, since they're outer space girls?
Yes, is that did you just
that's
intentionally
Spice
quote
Girls.
A Spice Girls lyric?
Spice
I was like,
Girls
hold on.
from
I was like, wait, Ethan's breaking my brain right now. And it's like a B-side Spice Girls song too. Spice Invaders. Oh my God. Ethan, I love you. This is amazing. Let's talk about the Spice Girls. Forget Josie and the Pussycats. I guess Josie and the Pussycats are a bit of a template, perhaps, for them.
And Alan Cummings is in both movies. So
yes, that's true. Yeah.
So this is wacky, because this is like not from the comics. They decide to reboot the show. I know, like, space was a thing, and everyone was like, let's just put people in space. But actually, like, we were looking, there's Gilligan's Planet, where they shoot the cast of Gilligan's Island into space. That's 10 years later. So I don't know. None of us, I think, know the full history of things in outer space. But I wonder if this is one of the early examples of, like, let's just take this thing everyone knows and throw them into space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and the Jetsons was in 62, Lost in Space is in 65, so those both predate, but those are both
things you
space,
know and
exactly,
putting them in
like they're
space.
about
Those are original space stories.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, hey, we're just gonna put these people in space. It's so odd. Ethan, what do you think of this?
I think it's an interesting take. I will also go back to my comments on how poorly aged a lot of the villains are in the previous series.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a little better that it's space, because it's less obvious from my recollection. Now, I could be very wrong. I could go back and see some alien that could very well obviously be a caricature of someone. But the aliens, when I saw the series in general, I did not think they were anything like offensive, whereas there are some overt stereotypes in the original series.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when they're on Earth. I wonder if part of putting them in space was that. I mean, not that I think anyone was probably
but also
being very thoughtful, but
I love their outfits. I love their space outfits. They're almost kind of superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one even gets rid of, I guess, the premise of them being a band even more, at least on this first episode. Because at least in the original series, like, oh, had been playing a concert and then get, like, diverted. Here it's like, I don't know, we kind of see in the opening credits how they ended up in space, but it's never really explained why
That's the
they're
only
suddenly in
exposition we
space.
ever get. There's no other exposition about that. You have to pay attention to the theme song.
And what is it
How
in the
ru-
theme
how
song?
rushed that is.
What is the explanation?
The
don't even remember.
explanation is in the visuals. That they're taking a photo at in front of a rocket ship, and Alexandra, trying to be the main character, butts in, photobombs, and then basically accidentally pushes everybody into the rocket ship, which then launches into space.
Oh, I missed that detail.
Well, yeah,
That
no,
doesn't
it's
explain
only
it
in the
all,
opening
but-
credits, because otherwise the show just starts and they're like, we're lost in space, and it's like, wait, how
They
did
don't
you
even
get into
reference
space?
They don't even reference it in space. So we're not like, oh, Alexandra, if you hadn't cut in front of us, we wouldn't be in the... No, they didn't even do that.
Yeah, it's a weird setup. It works though. I'd say it works better for me as not a fan of this world or any attachment to these characters. Just as a show, this one is even wackier. I mean, I know the first one sounded wacky because it's an underwater dictator who plays a pipe organ, but this one, I don't know. I think the addition of bleep and the stuff with the, like, there's good jokes in the way they're trying to detect if the androids are copies and they throw the water on them, and then you get that great scene where Melody, like, throws herself in water because she's like, wait, I'm trying to see if I'm a robot. Like, that's all fun. I liked all of those pieces because they go further into the absurdity, I'd say.
Yeah. I did on both series laugh out loud at some of Melody's lines. Like, they're actually, she does have some legitimately funny lines. She's like the only one, but she does have some really fun little bits.
What is your favorite part, Ethan, of this episode or this iteration of Josie?
I thought it was interesting. I wouldn't say this is my favorite part, but I just thought it was an interesting point to make. That the villain, Karnak, I don't think they knew this, but when I saw that, I was like, that's an Inhuman.
I know.
Like,
Some of the
why does
names did.
Same spelling and everything.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, no, I think my favorite is actually the theme song. I think it's a really fun spin on the Josie and the Pussycats theme, the original theme. They changed the lyrics enough to be about, like, space, but it's pretty much the same thing.
And bleep is a welcome addition.
And bleep, absolutely, which,
Yeah.
funnily enough, I had actually remembered this, but it was too late. We do see bleep a couple more times outside of this. We see him in the show Jellystone, which is
the Yogi Berra?
the Yogi Bear show. That's basically everybody but Scooby-Doo.
Huh.
Bleep makes a cameo. And I saw that on Twitter, like, years ago. And I was like, wait, how?
That's
Because
really
they don't
funny.
have the rights to Josie, but they had the rights to Bleep because Bleep was original. Bleep
yeah.
was a Hanna-Barbera character.
Yeah, of course.
And then, if I remember correctly, Bleep is kind of becomes an alien parody in the Archie Robot Chicken special, where they do some outer space segments. So
Right.
yeah, I wish
I remember.
wish
I
had
think we
remembered.
watched one of those when Rob and I were prepping for our last episode on Josie. I remember
So yeah,
putting that on.
I wish I had remembered, because also, Seth Green, creator of Robot Chicken, he and I think like at least one of the other guys, reprise their roles as du jour in space. And then they get eviscerated by Bleep.
Yes, I do remember that
Yes,
clip.
we
now.
did.
We
Yeah.
did watch that clip. I did not know who Bleep was at the time, so I wouldn't have gotten that reference, certainly. It's fun how Melody is the only one who can understand what Bleep is saying.
Yes.
It's weird.
Yeah, and there's the nice little rivalry then between Bleep and Sebastian the cat as well, which is a fun little through line.
Yeah.
Well, let us launch into our final segment. Let's not get lost in space. Let's get lost in pondering possibilities.
Will the future you describe be averted?
So, Guido, what are we talking about for our pondering possibilities?
So this is it. This is the why we're here today, which is the comic book series that really almost 50 years later is finally puts the Josie and the Pussycats in space.
Yes, it is Josie and the Pussycats in space. It is a Comixology original. This is chapters 1 through 5. It was wrapping up in April 2020.
And these are the only 5 chapters. We read them all. The story is by Alex de Campi. The art and cover are by Devaki Neogi. Lettering by Jack Morelli. Coloring by Lee Loudridge. Editor-in-chief Victor Gorlick. And the editors of this series are Alex Segura, I'm a big fan of his, and Jamie Lee Rotant. And so Alex de Campi had done Archie versus Predator prior to this and wanted to do some horror stuff, because yes, this is a horror title, and still does a lot of horror work in indie comics and in prose novels. And Devaki Neogi is an indie comics artist with a few books to her name, especially doing covers for Boom, some Boom titles.
And I actually saw Alex at New York Comic-Con this past year talking about horror comics on a panel, but she did not talk about this.
About Josie and the Pussycats in space. And we have this is, instead of a summary, this is the solicit for the series. So Rob, do you want to read us that? And then we'll get into our discussion.
Sure. Josie and the Pussycats are the hottest band in outer space, but with fame and fortune comes turmoil, as internal conflicts are threatening to tear the group apart. But that's nothing compared to the alien horrors they're about to encounter as they find themselves adrift in the vastness of space. Even if the Pussycats manage to stick together as a band, will they be able to survive the horrors that await them in the final frontier?
And spoiler alert for people who haven't read this and want to read it, we're going to talk about the whole thing. Because I will say, I'll start us off. I didn't know it was going to be horror.
No,
And
me too.
As
Yeah.
I was reading it, I was like, ooh, Rob's going to really get into this, because I had no idea. Slowly, like, they start to have that, like, black goop alien thing show up, and I was like, oh, it's going to end up being silly. Nope. It ends up being horror.
When I first read it a couple of years ago, I actually didn't know it was going to be horror either. I thought, oh, yay, we're bringing Josie in space. By the way, this is not in print. They never put it in
They
print.
never even did a collected edition in print?
No. I think
Oh,
they
no.
promised it at one point, and then it got shelved.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
a
only
shame.
the only shelving I want of this is I want this book on my shelf.
I know, that's the problem with those Comixology originals. Hopefully Archie Comics can get a deal to be able to print it, because it's fun, and it's a good length too. It's, it's 5 probably slightly shorter issues, so it's like a 100-page book. It'd be a perfect trade paperback for people who want to digest a fully start to finish done story.
Yeah, and I think and it does a great job too of weaving in the pop band elements of it, even without like a song break, because it's comic. But it makes you know from the very beginning, oh, this is a band. Like even that like solicit starts with like, oh, the first problem is with the internal band dynamics, which is also such a key part of the Josie movie. Oh, and then by the way, there's an evil alien.
Well, and unlike the TV show, this starts us off with they're doing a concert on another planet. Like, so right away, they're setting up why they're in space, this alternate world or future where we can space travel. So it's, a little more fully fleshed out than the cartoon was.
Yeah, I was fully expecting it to be, I think after watching the 2 animated series episodes and reading many of the Archie comics, not the horror ones necessarily, but many Archie ones where it's like, it's Archie meets the B-52s or whatever. It's like, oh, it's like silly. So I was kind of expecting that tone. And I think what Alex de Campi does really well is like kind of starts with that tone a bit and then gradually and is very like subtly and slowly starts to put the horror element. So it really kind of sneaks up on you as a reader. Did you both kind of have that same sensation?
Yeah.
In 2020 when I read it, yeah. But when I chose it for the episode, I was like suspending my disbelief and trying to recapture when I had read it.
Because the thing it has the most then like DNA then with is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh,
because you get this alien that is able to pretend to be other people, and that like the only way to tell is through like infrared, and like you get so much of that same thing in The Thing where you don't know who is real and who is not. So it's almost like Josie and the Pussycats meets The Thing. That could have been an alternate title for this.
What's fun though is like that is, and I imagine this is not an accident, that plot element exists in that episode we watched.
Yes.
It exists in the pilot of the cartoon, of course, in a totally absurd and different way. But that idea of like these alien doubles is there. And she just took it and said like, no, let's do this for real. Let's play this for real.
I never thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
That's
yeah.
incredible.
Because there's that one whole moment in the animated series where the gang is all like locked up. And then we see other versions of the gang that are about to like actually go out. So they're about to like spread the evil robots everywhere. So it's robots. It's not an alien. So it's also a little less creepy in that way. But yeah, I mean, so do you think like, because we were looking too, Ethan, like that, we were thinking, oh, there must have been some Josie in space in between.
Yeah, like some Silver Age
TV
or Bronze
show.
Age issue where they put her in space, and it doesn't look like there is. It looks
No,
like
there's
this
never
is
a
the
Josie in
first
Space
one.
comic. I think maybe they've done plays on that. Like in the 90s, they had Archie and Friends where Josie was like half of the book, and there's a cover of them in space, but I think that was just kind of a nod to the cartoon. They've done a couple of, they had a recent Josie 60th anniversary issue, and there was just kind of another Josie in space story, but really they played music, and their little cartoon character, not Leaf, but their little cartoon character Cosmo from Archie comics shows up, and it's he kind of derails it from being a Josie story. But yeah, I think that's the last we've ever actually seen of Josie in space.
Wow.
Yeah, so then it really seems like Alex was using that episode as a direct reference.
I could see that.
Yeah. And so as a Josie fan, do you like this series? Do you think it's a series people should read? Is it enough Josie for you? Yeah.
I absolutely do think people should read it. I don't think it should be their first Josie book, but I think it should be like their second or third. I think actually your first Josie book should be 2016. The 2016 run, because it's very accessible, and like people that know Josie will love it for the Easter eggs, but people that are getting to know Josie will appreciate it on surface level. This one is good if you like a good horror comic, but also that Venn diagram is kind of weird. Like I can't see just a regular horror fan reading this and be like, wait, Josie and the Pussycats, I think I remember that cartoon. What are they doing here? Who's this guy named Sock? Why are they calling this guy Sock? But yeah, I really like it. I think the art is beautiful. another reason why it should have been printed. But yeah, I think the art is beautiful. I think it's eerie where it's supposed to be. I think it's action-based where it's supposed to be. Especially when we first see Alexandra, I was like, oh,
yeah,
she's gonna kick some
because the
butt
Cabots
here.
are like they're like space military people. Like they have their own ships, and like that's a really fun aspect.
Yeah,
but she still has the cat, which of course is great.
Yeah,
Well,
my
actually,
only. Okay, go ahead, Ethan.
She talks to the cat, which, by the way, he's colored differently. I think Sebastian was white in this comic instead of black and white. He has a thought bubble, and something else that was a little inconsistency that, for lack of a better term, kind of bugged me was she refers to Alexander as little brother at one point in the comic. I was like, they're twins. so unless she's getting real technical,
like
and
he was
she
born
came
a
out of
minute
the womb
after
first.
her. Yeah, exactly.
No, they're twins.
I think my only criticism with this comic, after watching the other shows, is that the Cabots do get like the short end of the stick in this comic, where like she gets to fly the thing, but they don't really get to do too much. And I would imagine because they are either the antagonists or like the creators of chaos in the animated shows and in the comics, that they felt like, well, we already got an alien that's like melting people's flesh off, so we don't need like someone else doing something. So they're pushed to a side, and I love those characters so much that I wish they were more, but that's my only quibble.
Well, I agree with you there, because I have been saying this for as long as I love Josie. Almost everybody under the sun in the Archie universe has gotten their own series. And clearly, an antagonistic character can have a run. Cheryl Blossom had like an 18-issue series in the 90s. Where is my Cabots book? Where is my book about the Cabots, how they came to be, or just more stories with them? There, in one of the Archie horror anthologies, I think it's Archie's Weirder Mysteries, there is a story with Alexandra Cabot, and it's kind of flipped because it is a Josie story. Josie is there, other characters, but it is in we see it through the lens of Alexandra. Alexandra is the main character, and not because she's trying to be. They are telling that story through that angle, and I thought that was very noteworthy, and I thought, more of this, please.
I literally just filed that issue away yesterday, Rob. You had it in one of your piles from down here.
Oh my gosh.
Chilling Adventures presents Weirder Mysteries.
Yeah.
Which is a play on the old cartoon, Archie's Weird Mysteries.
Oh, okay.
The title anyway.
I like all those one-shot that they're doing are really a fun way for someone who's not a fan to get like different tastes of the characters and the stories in different genres. I like those a lot.
I like them too, but I do wish that they would go back to what Mark Waid was doing in 2015.
Yeah, and a modern series.
Yeah, Riverdale without the spookiness and murder. Dawson's Creek if it were good.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about the end of this.
Yes.
Because that's where I really loved it, because at the end, also, I mean, yes, there was a lot about the band dynamics, but then the whole middle of the story becomes in space, and I'm thinking, oh, they sort of moved away from the fact that they're a band. But then they're getting back to, I don't know, are they on Earth or wherever, at some space station, I don't know. But they're getting back, and everyone's like, oh no, it's been 10 years, you're legends now. And they're giving a big concert performance. And then we find out that, who is it that infects Melody? Is that Alan?
Alan, yeah.
So Alan is actually an alien and then takes over Melody, and then the series ends. And that is just so fun and perfect horror genre.
And it's a bit of a different dynamic throughout too, right, Ethan? Because Alan always seems to be kind of attached, or maybe as a crush on Melody, not on Josie.
Alan and Josie are an item in the cartoon and the movie. And when I say cartoon, I probably should say cartoons, but I'm lumping both of them together. Alan is in literally one episode of Riverdale, and he's in that Josie Return of the Pussycats we watched, and he's dating Valerie. I think this is the only time he's with Melody. He may have dated Melody here and there, but this is the only explicit time that we've seen her with Alan. And then, of course, with Alexandra, she's always like into Alan, but never gets him. Except, actually, spoiler alert, she does get with him in this series, 2016 run. I'll always go back to the 2016 run. Yeah, there's a point where he had dated Josie throughout the 2016 run. And then down the line, as the series was quote-unquote wrapping up, there was an arc where he and Alexandra got together. And so technically in that universe now, he and Alexandra are together because we haven't gone back to the 2016 criminally underrated, cut short after 9 issues.
So we're just missing Alexander and Alan in a relationship. That will complete everything. Right. Yes. Alan will have slept with everyone. But I was also thinking, like, the story I made in my head is, like, we don't know when Alan has changed. And maybe Melanie being, like, the dumb one, like, he was like, I'm gonna like, start a relationship with her because she's gonna be the easiest of the 3 to change over. Like, that's the story I made in my head, why we had that coupling.
Yeah, could be. I think could be.
I can see that.
And even just, like, the broader questions too. I mean, I love, like, the actual, like, twist of the ending, which I did not see coming at all. But even, like, the other questions about, like, oh, they've been asleep for 10 years and now, or it's been 10 years and now they're legends because they were kind of lost in space and now they're back. Like, even that is interesting, big questions to pose in a 100-page comic about a girl rock band.
Well, one of my favorite points is the reason why they go into the cryo sleep is to save on food and water and other stuff.
And the cost of keeping people awake. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was a lot of, like, Alien, a lot of Philip K. Dick, like, all those kind of things just sprinkled throughout with, like, that. It's like, oh, we can't spend the money on you. We have to keep you in cryo sleep. And it's one of the reasons why there's the friction between the band, even, because they don't like to have to keep doing this. So it's even woven into the plot in a smart way.
So, moving from outer space, I have a question before we wrap up. I'm wondering, so we've looked at what if Josie and the Pussycats end up in outer space, go to outer space. Where do you want to send Josie and the Pussycats? Where do you think there's good stories to be told? So, Rob, do you want to start?
No, I've got 2, and it's not places, I guess, as people. Because in 2024, there's going to be a new Spinal Tap movie, and I thought how fun to do a one-off comic where, like, Spinal Tap accidentally gets booked to open for Josie and the Pussycats. And you kind of do, like, old heavy metal guys with, like, this younger pop band, and, like, I think there could be fun stuff there.
You can also pull in, like, the meta humor of the Josie movie with the
totally with like the humor of Spinal Tap. And then the thing that I don't know, obviously it's rights issues, but they should meet up with Jem and the Holograms and do a Josie and the Pussycats, Jem and the Holograms. And I was thinking Alexandra hooks up with Eric Raymond and starts managing the Misfits there. And I think Melody discovers Jem's secret identity, but because, like, she's so dumb, like, she can't, like, explain it to anybody else. Like, there's a lot of things there. I'm sure obviously it's, like, right issues, but how could these 2 huge all-girl rock bands not have a meetup?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Enjoy that.
Throw the Hex Girls in while we're at it.
So I was thinking more almost like Rob, our answer last week, last episode to Superman True Brit, I was thinking more about time travel than travel in geography. But now that Ethan's brought the Spice Girls into my mind and Rob has mentioned a crossover, I'm going to have to say Spice Girls. So let's do like Josie and the Pussycats at Glastonbury and have some Spice Girls reunion happening or something like that. So I think that is definitely what I want to see. So let's get them into England.
That would be fun.
And somehow throw in Wyatt Frame as a meta reference.
What is that? I don't know.
Wyatt was Alan Cummings' character.
Oh my gosh! Perfect.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
So you got in Spice World.
Returns,
exactly. Totally.
He returned as Wyatt.
Yeah, but
sure
as the Spice Girls manager, also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's revealed that was Wyatt in that movie as well.
Yeah. Okay.
He was always Wyatt.
I'm totally here for it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I hope someone is listening who can make that happen.
Deb Kaplan, Harry Elfont, whoever directed the Spice Girls movie. So
Ethan, where do you want the girls to go?
10,000 BC, and here's why.
Oh.
That was supposed to be the third series. They were supposed to do a third series or season, whatever you want to call it, where they go into 10,000 BC and they run around and they fight dinosaurs or meet dinosaurs or whatever.
It'd be like the Flintstones, I guess. It was
And what's so funny is I don't even know if I dreamt this or not, because when I look it up, I can't find it. But I saw on Twitter somewhere, there's like some Hanna-Barbera account I follow. And they made a post about some blueprints and stills from what would have been the Josie and the Pussycats in like caveman prehistoric times. And I thought, why has Archie not at least tried to do this as a comic book?
Yeah.
They put the Archie gang in prehistoric times all the time. But why not Josie?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be really fun.
Yeah.
I wonder, and I guess is Flintstones Hanna-Barbera? It is, right?
Yes.
So that was probably was a thought that it would be at least like that, even if it wasn't explicitly that they like are in Bedrock or anything.
But it makes sense too, because the first series is Scooby-Doo, which is like super 70s contemporary. Then you get the Jetsons with outer space, and then you would get the Flintstones. So you get like all of those like key.
They're almost like amalgam, Josie and the Pussycats amalgams.
Pretty much. And then my other pick is we've already seen an episode where Scooby-Doo meets Josie and the Pussycats. But it's the cartoon versions of both. Back when they had Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, which was actually the modern version. I say modern in air quotes. There's an episode with Macklemore, and it came out in like 2015. But it's like the new Scooby-Doo movies. So in the new Scooby-Doo movies, which was the series where they met the Harlem Globetrotters, Mama Cass, and Josie and the Pussycats, it was the cartoon versions. Well, I need like a modern movie or episode where they meet animated versions of the movie Josie and the Pussycats cast.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
that would
the
be
current Scooby gang. So it would be Matthew Lillard, and it would be, I guess, Kate Micucci as Velma, Gray Griffin, and Frank Welker. And who's doing Scooby? Oh, Frank Welker's also doing Scooby. So it would be the cast of the Josie movie reprising their roles in that same universe. They did it for Urkel. You can do it for Josie.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, and there was the rumored, I think it might have gotten canceled, but they were going to do an animated Married with Children. So I was thinking, oh, this totally fits.
And then, of course, it's so great. Let's do it twice. Do it, but with the Riverdale Josie and the Pussycats. Same Scooby cast, animated, but do the version with Josie and the Pussycats, or it might cost less money. There was a Indiegogo Scooby-Doo live action fan made series that was called Mystery Incorporated. And it was kind of like what if Scooby-Doo was Riverdale. So you make it live action, and you give us those actors whose names I couldn't tell you, and then the Pussycats from the Riverdale universe. I feel like that'd actually be more fitting. In case you couldn't tell, I think about this a lot.
Yeah, I know. You have. Well, and it all makes sense bringing that movie back in some way, because I feel like when we covered it last year, it was an anniversary, and I feel like it was getting a bit of attention. I don't know if it was the 20th anniversary.
I think it was the 20th.
And so I think it was getting like reapprised for the really clever satire it is, as we discussed on that episode. And so I think it totally makes sense to have the cycle of pop culture reboots and stuff. It makes sense to like try to pull that version of Josie back into pop culture again. And I think your suggestion for how to do it is great.
Yeah, they should have the band from the live action movie play like Coachella. That's the next step. After these other things, after your ideas become big hits.
No, they're going to Glastonbury, so they can.
Oh, that's true. Yes, with the Spice Girls. Yes.
That's part of their tour.
Exactly. They're at many festivals. All right.
Big Time Rush will open for them.
So that is a wrap. Thank you, Ethan. Make Mine Amalgam. Ethan, please let people know where they can follow you for your homemade superhero action figure universe, your love of Josie, all things Archie, and of course, your love of Amalgam.
Well, you can still follow me primarily on Twitter, mostly because force of habit and familiarity, as at MakeMineAmalgam. Instagram, I'm hardly there, but it's at make_mine_amalgam. I'm also trying to be a little more on Blue Sky and Threads, which I should be the same thing, at MakeMineAmalgam there. Well, actually, Threads would be underscores because it's connected to Instagram. It's a whole mess. But yeah, primarily Twitter. The Fodderverse, which is my universe of custom figures, is growing exponentially, overwhelmingly exponentially, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's so fun to see, and I'm excited for the next phase when you start to have some stories building around them.
Actually, I do have a lot of those. I do threads of those on Twitter. I actually just made another character. Well, I'm always making characters, spending way too much money. But I made this one character. I took a choker from a black cat figure, and I put the head of a wasp figure on Moondragon. Now, I had an initial plan for Moondragon, but for some reason the cape wasn't removable. So I just indirectly said to Hasbro, "Hold my beer. I'll still make it." And so what I did was I created this character. I named her Crescent because she's got a crescent moon on her cape, and it's a big flowing cape. So I'm all about reference humor with my names, with my characters. So I named her Rachel McFarlane. Of course it's spelled AEL. That's the only way you spell Rachel. Because I bought that wasp figure initially so I could put it on a Sue Storm body, just for my own validation of exactly. But after I got so engrossed in making my own characters, I was like, okay, well, let's just make a character that's kind of her, but as her own new character. And then McFarlane, because of the flowing Dracula-looking cape, very Spawn-tastic. But yeah, I'm all over the place with my naming conventions. I've recreated characters from past stories pre-Fodderverse, and I've integrated them into the Fodderverse. I've seen people make some of their own kit bashes, and I've integrated them into my universe.
Fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Next, you also need, like, I'm picturing, like, Alec Baldwin in Beetlejuice. You need, like, a giant set, like, where you actually set them up in scene with things, background.
That's what I've actually tried to do.
Buildings and stuff like that.
Funnily enough, I have picked up all of the McFarlane backdrops.
Oh,
so
fun.
I have the Batcave, which is where I keep my characters Avian and Avian Girl, and they're my Batman and Batgirl. And actually, Harvey Keaton is the real name of Avian.
Cute.
Which is very layered, because both
is it Harvey Birdman?
Both Harvey Birdman,
and
Michael Keaton, and then Michael Keaton was both Batman and Birdman.
Yes, that's true.
I made civilian versions of them, and I put them in the Wayne Manor backdrop, and I got the villain hideout, and I used that for my Teen Titans analog, the Teen Idols.
Well, speaking of Scooby-Doo, Guido made me aware now that Freddie Prinze Jr. of Scooby-Doo fame, all he does is paint miniatures and show them on Instagram. And post them on Instagram. So, Ethan, you have to connect with Freddie Prinze and do a Fodderverse Scooby-Doo matchup with Fred Jones himself.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Now, funnily enough, actually, my character Pet Shop Boy, he gets his last name Jones from Fred Jones.
Oh, there you go.
His first name is Dexter, after Dexter Douglas from Freakazoid. Because that's my favorite thing about the Fodderverse. When I'm naming these characters, it's either a really good pun, like my character the Goof's real name, Judy Punch, or it's like, hey, let's amalgamate two things that I really love, like this Freakazoid thing and Scooby-Doo, and make this completely new character.
Amazing. Well, it all comes back to Amalgam. That's why you're MakeMineAmalgam. So go follow Ethan to follow that world. And otherwise, that is a wrap. Thank you, dear watchers, for listening. I've been Guido.
I've been Rob.
The reading list is in the show notes. You can follow us on all social media except Twitter at Dear Watchers.
And leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back soon with another trip through the multiverse.
In the meantime, in the words of Uatu, keep pondering the possibilities.